He did say that.
Yeah, she really did say that after she just got done Gaddafi and then laughed about it.
We came, we saw, he died.
We came, we saw, he died. The fact that any human being would ever do that. By the way he died, that's some dark.
2016 election, the Russian intelligence was tapped by the Dutch, and the Dutch reported back to our intelligence. They're baffled because they haven't colluded with Donald Trump, but they have tapped into Hillary Clinton's communications, and she's saying that they have. And they want to know why this is, and they came to the conclusion that she's lying about the Russians because she was trying to protect her own emails.
Yeah, she really did say that. Yeah, she really did say that after she just got done with Gaddafi and then laughed about it. We came, we saw, he died. We came, we saw, he died. The fact that any human being would ever do that. By the way he died, that's some dark. In the 2016 election, the Russian intelligence was monitored by the Dutch, and the Dutch reported back to our intelligence. They're baffled because they haven't colluded with Donald Trump, but they have tapped into Hillary Clinton's communications, and she's claiming that they have, and they want to know why this is. And they concluded that she's lying about the Russians to—
Desperate they were to keep Trump out.
Here's the important thing to me. What I learned is that the Russians were successful.
Which is wild.
They would do anything.
I don't think there's any way to read that report and not conclude they accomplished what they set out to do.
They just felt like this is a tool that we have, and let's use it. And let's just say whatever the we have, say anything.
And to help Donald Trump, and they succeeded.
They repeated that lie. Completely lost respect for Obama when he repeated that lie a few days before the election, knowing it's false.
They had an objective to sow discord and divisiveness within our society at large.
It is a little troubling because if people are fed nonstop propaganda, it is like mass hypnosis.
After 2016, he and Hillary, she was calling him a Russian agent, and he was calling her Crooked Hillary. Everybody thought that given she had destroyed 30,000 emails and the devices upon them, and they were under subpoena, that he would have the DOJ go after. And what did he say? The first thing he said, she suffered enough. People went to him and said, you've got to fire James Comey, the director of the FBI. He tried to sabotage.
Shield her own email. Hillary Clinton's downfall isn't just political, it's a historic farce. Joe Rogan and Victor Davis Hanson dismantled the myth of inevitability that surrounded her, exposing the hubris, the excuses, and the constant failed reinventions. She wasn't the glass ceiling breaker she claimed, but the symbol of an elite class that mistook privilege for destiny. From losing the easiest election in modern history to lingering in politics long after her time, Hillary is the perfect example of how ambition without authenticity always collapses. This shows how desperate they were to keep Trump out. Here's the important thing to me. What I learned is that the Russians were effective, which is wild. They would do anything. I don't think there's any way to read that report and not conclude they achieved what they said.
2011 thing where Obama allowed people to use propaganda against United States citizens.
Hillary Clinton is and has been an outstanding public servant.
What was done then under Obama, effective repeal of it, was called the Smith Modernization Act.
She was a great Secretary of State for me.
At the time, the media and media control was seen as the linchpin crux of winning the Cold War, piping in pro-U.S. media influence.
Set out to do. They just felt like, this is a tool that we have, and let's use it. Let's just say whatever the underscore we have. Say anything and to help Donald Trump, and they succeeded. They repeated that lie. Completely lost respect for Obama when he echoed that falsehood a few days before the election, knowing it's untrue. They had an objective to sow discord and divisiveness within our society at large. It is a little troubling because if people are fed non-stop propaganda, it is like mass hypnosis. After 2016, he and Hillary, she was calling him a Russian agent, and he was calling her Crooked Hillary. Everybody thought that, given she had destroyed 30,000 emails and the devices holding them, and they were under subpoena, that he would have the DOJ pursue her. What did he say? The first thing he—
Of the election, I think they had some crazy odds of Hillary winning. It was like in the 90%. We watched it from the Comedy Store. We did a podcast from the Comedy Store called the End of the World podcast. What was most fascinating was the podcast was over, and then we all went to the bar, and on the television, Jake Tapper was just seriously bummed out talking.
He said, she suffered enough. People went to him and said, you've got to fire James Comey, the director of the FBI. He said he tried to sabotage. If you're enjoying this video, please make sure to subscribe the channel and hit the bell icon. Hillary Clinton's political career is like a sequel nobody requested, but Hollywood kept funding anyway. Joe Rogan and Victor Davis Hanson don't just jab at her. They go for the jugular, unraveling the endless contradictions, the poorly crafted reinventions, and the remarkable ability to fail upward that has defined her entire existence. Hillary was supposed to be the Iron Lady of America, the inevitable—
Denialism. Unique? No. In 2016, in that interregnum between the election and the December certification, almost nightly, Hollywood actors went on television and they appealed to the electors who were constitutionally bound to reflect the majority vote in their state. They made a direct appeal to be what we call false.
First woman president, the unstoppable political machine. Instead, she became the political equivalent of a Windows update, constantly pushed on people, promising progress, and somehow always making things worse. Is that the 2011 thing where Obama allowed propaganda use against United States citizens? Hillary Clinton is and has been an exceptional public servant. What was done then under Obama, the effective repeal of it, was called the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. She was a great Secretary of State for me. At the time, the media and media control.
Overthrowing a government, installing a friendly one. It's been going on since they could. And back then it was way easier to pull off because there was no internet where you could pull off a Hillary Clinton video from more than a decade ago and go, look at her. She's pretty MAGA. You could put a fucking red hat on that lady and she'd be standing on that stage right next to...
Control was seen as the critical linchpin of winning the Cold War. Broadcasting pro-US media influence. Joe Rogan, never one to hold back, highlights the absurdity of Hillary's entire persona. She has tried every role in politics. The progressive champion, the centrist pragmatist, the grandmother with a folksy chuckle, the feminist icon, the relatable woman carrying hot sauce in her purse. None of it resonates because at the core, there is no authenticity. Hillary is the person who thinks downloading Spotify makes her relatable or that dabbing on Ellen will make young voters forget her Wall Street speeches. She is the politician who takes an image consultant's advice and turns it into a full-blown personality overhaul, only to realize halfway through that it makes her seem even more robotic. On the day of the election, I think they had some wild odds of Hillary winning. It was like in the 90%. We watched it from the Comedy Store. We did a podcast from the Comedy Store called the End of the World Podcast. What was most fascinating was the podcast was over, and then we all went to the bar, and on the television, Jake Tapper was just serious.
Swing states vote to reflect the popular vote. After they failed to do so and Donald Trump was declared the winner, we had major figures on the Democratic side say that he was not legitimately elected. Who were those people? The House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, said he was illegitimate. Hillary Clinton said he was illegitimate. Jimmy Carter said not only was he illegitimate, but he was elected through Russian agency, which was demonstrably proved false by Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller.
Obviously bummed out, talking about it. Victor Davis Hanson takes it further. He sees Hillary not as a victim of misfortune, but as the product of entitlement. She built her entire career on proximity to Bill Clinton's charisma, yet when it came time to stand alone, she was like a karaoke singer thrust onto the Grammy stage. The gap between how she views herself and how the public perceives her is vast. In her mind, she's the experienced stateswoman robbed by history. To the public, she's the candidate who couldn't even defeat a political outsider with no government. Experienced twice. Is election denialism unique?
We gotta have tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadows. If they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked, they're gone. If they've been working and are law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes, and you have to try to learn English, and you have to wait in line.
No. In 2016, in that interim between the election and the December certification, almost nightly, Hollywood actors went on television, and they appealed to the electors who were constitutionally bound to reflect the majority vote in their state. They made a direct appeal to be what we call faithless. Rogan laughs at the notion that Hillary keeps presenting herself as the last great hope for democracy. This is the same person who ran against Donald Trump, now the current president. With every single advantage in her favor, the media, Hollywood, the political elite, a former president for a husband, a campaign war chest, and the Obama machine behind her. And she still managed to lose. If democracy hinges on Hillary Clinton, then democracy has bigger issues than anyone realized. Really just overthrowing a government, installing a friendly one. It's like it's been happening since they could. And back then, it was far easier to pull off because there was no internet where you could pull up a Hillary Clinton video from over a decade ago and say, look at her, she's pretty MAGA. You could put a _red hat on that lady and
and Anderson, it is hard to think of a political comeback that is actually more significant than this one. I'm tempted to say Richard Nixon, but that really falls short of what Donald Trump has achieved.
I think for a lot of people, that was the end of trust in mainstream media. That was the first nail in the coffin. Those to be like, you were so wrong.
He was illegitimate. Hillary Clinton said he was illegitimate. Jimmy Carter said not only was he illegitimate, but he was elected through Russian agency, which was demonstrably proven false by Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller. This is the same Hillary who claims to be the defender of the marginalized while aligning with Wall Street and corporate elites. Rogan can't help but highlight the absurdity of someone flying private jets to climate conferences and then lecturing middle-class Americans about carpooling to work. The double standard is so obvious, it's almost performance art. Hanson digs into the deeper issue. Hillary Clinton represents the hubris of the political class. She is the embodiment of a ruling elite that thinks leadership is their birthright. Her career isn't about ideas, policies, or reform. It's about power. That's why she shifts positions constantly, why her campaign slogans always sound like they were crafted by a committee, and why she never inspires genuine enthusiasm. Hanson paints her as the queen of a political dynasty who kept expecting a coronation, only to find the public wasn't interested. Rogan skewers her media strategy. Hillary loves scripted interviews, safe environments, and softball questions. But the moment she's faced with unscripted reality, the mask slips the awkward fake laugh, the rehearsed catchphrases, the malfunctioning attempt at humor. It's like watching a robot glitch on stage. I think we need tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadows. If they've committed a crime, deport them, no questions asked, they're gone. If they've been working in a law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes. You have to try to learn English, and you have to wait in line. Rogan notes that Hillary doesn't lose to her opponents as much as she loses to herself. She is her own worst enemy, and every attempt to reinvent her image only makes her look more like a shapeshifter with no core identity. Victor Davis Hanson, with his historical lens, goes nuclear. He compares Hillary to failed historical figures who mistook privilege for destiny. She believed her last name, her connections, and her resume guaranteed her the presidency. But America isn't a monarchy, and voters, despite their divisions, still recoil at the stench of entitlement. Hanson emphasizes that Hillary's failure wasn't just personal, it was symbolic. She exposed the fragility of an entire political machine that thought it could control outcomes. In 2016, that machine got shattered, and Hillary was left as the face of its collapse. Rogan doesn't let go of the comedy gold in Hillary's attempts to stay relevant. Every few months she reappears in the media with a new take, a new critique, a new complaint. She's like the neighbor who keeps showing up at parties uninvited, reminding everyone she used to live in the big house on the block. Nobody asks for her input, but she offers it anyway, usually packaged with a tone of, "If you just listened to me, none of this would have happened." Rogan frames her as the world's most persistent political ghost, haunting American politics long after her time has passed. Doesn't mean that Hillary would have been a good choice either. She was a terrible choice. She's a corrupt politician, one of the most unlikable people that's ever run for office. They were trying to get people to support her just because she's a woman. This is going to be our history. Women, ladies, I stand with her. So, there's all these women, this blind allegiance toward this career politician, completely full of, she's been full of forever. Hanson makes the case that Hillary's greatest flaw is her inability to grasp the cultural moment. She thought identity politics, elite endorsements, and media coverage would carry her to victory. What she missed was the groundswell of populism, the anger at elites, and the hunger for authenticity. Even if messy, Donald Trump, now sitting in the Oval Office, understood that moment better than she ever could. Hanson doesn't give Trump credit for brilliance so much as for instinct. But that instinct was enough to bury Hillary's carefully crafted, consultant-approved campaign. Joe Rogan circles back to the absurdity of Hillary's legacy. She's the only candidate who managed to lose to Donald Trump in 2016. And if she ran again, she'd probably lose to him twice. The Democratic Party treats her like a wise elder, but Rogan sees her as political kryptonite. Whenever she shows up, enthusiasm drops, resentment rises, and independents roll their eyes. If Democrats truly wanted to lose again, putting Hillary back on the ticket would be the fastest way to do it. Trump met Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska, last week. It was an outreach not to Zelensky or Ukraine or Europe, but to America. They think Donald Trump is a strong leader, but also more open to seeking a peace settlement rather than the whatever-it-takes attitude of the Biden administration, so he can appeal to Donald Trump to put an end to it on Russian terms. Donald Trump was not the author of the failed reset. Remember the 2009 Geneva debacle where Hillary Clinton pushed that reset button, and we were supposed to be friendly with Russia, and basically, we said you should be democratic. You should be democratic. So they were loud but carried a twig rather than spoke softly with a club. And if there is a peace settlement, it will be the work, whether the left likes it or not. Of Hanson sums up the irony. Hillary Clinton spent decades preparing for a presidency that never materialized. She had the donors, the connections, the think tanks, the resume, and the machine. She thought history owed her the crown. Instead, history humbled her. She is the Cleopatra of American politics, clinging to grandeur while her empire burns around her. Hanson paints her as a cautionary tale, proof that entitlement without authenticity is a guaranteed path to failure. Rogan closes the roast by mocking Hillary's endless comeback attempts. She teases a run, gives a cryptic interview, drops a podcast, writes a book, shows up on a talk show. She refuses to accept that her moment has passed. To Rogan, Hillary is like an aging rock band, still touring on nostalgia, playing the same old songs to a shrinking crowd, convinced they're still headlining stadiums. The audience isn't cheering anymore. They're yawning, scrolling their phones, and wondering why she won't leave the stage. Hanson seals it with a final blow. Hillary Clinton isn't just a failed politician. She's a monument to the hubris of an elite class that thought it could bend reality to its will. If you compare Watergate to what Hillary Clinton did with Russian collusion, where she actually hired a foreign spy and paid him, which is illegal, to interfere in a campaign, and then had him tap a former campaign aide, Charles Dolan, for fake Russian smears that he got, and then collaborated with Danchenko and they created this whole dossier, and then she fed it among all her contacts in the State Department, people like Victoria Nuland, and then they went into the FBI, who was paying him. It was 10 times bigger than Watergate. She believed destiny was on her side. But destiny, as it turns out, had other plans. Instead of being remembered as the first woman president, Hillary will be remembered as the woman who proved that inevitability in politics is a myth and that arrogance has a shelf life. And so the roast leaves her where she always ends up, hovering on the edges of relevance, insisting the world would be better if only it had crowned her queen. While America moves on, Joe Rogan laughs at her absurdity. Victor Davis Hanson dissects her entitlement, and together they shred the myth of Hillary Clinton, leaving behind nothing but the echo of a failed dynasty and the reminder that sometimes the most dangerous weapon in politics isn't your opponent, it's yourself. The tragedy of Hillary Clinton is that she keeps mistaking persistence for popularity. Reappearing again and again doesn't make the public want her back. It just reminds them why they rejected her in the first place. Joe Rogan emphasizes how every reappearance comes packaged with the same recycled lines about shattered glass ceilings and being misunderstood. It's less a political message and more like a rerun of a show nobody wanted renewed. The problem is, Hillary isn't evolving. She's repeating, hoping this time the same act will yield different results. 3 different states, and Anderson. It is hard to think of a political comeback more significant than this one. I'm tempted to say Richard Nixon, but that really falls short of what Donald Trump has achieved. I think for a lot of people, that was the end of trust in mainstream media. That was the first nail in the coffin. Those to be like, you guys were so wrong. Victor Davis Hanson peels back the layers of her obsession with being validated by history. For Hillary, losing wasn't just political, it was personal humiliation. She believed she was entitled to a legacy, a place in the pantheon of trailblazers. And when voters denied her that, she never recovered. Hanson explains that she spends her days crafting excuses, not just to comfort herself, but to rewrite her story for future historians. Every excuse, every finger pointed, every speech about what went wrong is less about clarity and more about legacy management. Hillary is trying to write history while still alive, hoping repetition will one day turn her failures into misunderstood triumphs. Rogan doesn't let her escape that delusion. He points out that no one is clamoring for Hillary's political return except Hillary. The Democratic Party may prop her up occasionally, but deep down, they know she's a liability. For every sympathetic cheer she gets from her most loyal supporters, there are 10 times as many groans from voters who see her as yesterday's problem. Rogan calls this the curse of irrelevance. Hillary still acts like she's the centerpiece of American politics when, in reality, she's become the punchline. And Hanson's final stab in this extended critique is brutal. He argues that Hillary is proof that being overprepared doesn't guarantee success. She had decades of preparation, endless resources, and the illusion of inevitability, but no authenticity. Hanson warns that she is the prime example of what happens when ambition outpaces likability. In the end, Hillary Clinton isn't remembered for breaking barriers or setting standards. She's remembered for losing the easiest win in modern political history and refusing to fade quietly into the background.